Okay, so welcome everybody. I think as Carl has mentioned, the internet's talking a lot about, ChatGPT and all those sorts of models and capabilities come from a company called OpenAI. And you'll see a lot on the internet about prompt engineering, but I wanted to approach it from a discussion of, is your business geared towards the benefits of OpenAI? How do you leverage this from a commercial standpoint, to benefit your company, your customers, your bottom line? And so that's what this talk will be about. This is going to be the agenda for today. So I believe that, to really fully understand the implications and the benefits of OpenAI, we kind of need to look at the past and to see what, technologies did previously to companies. And it'll help, better understand, what it means for us in the present. From there, we'll also talk about the future. I'll give a quick summary and then we'll open it up for some questions and answers. Cool. So the past. I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. This is how traditional business looked before the internet. Okay. You could reach out through telephone, through post. I don't want to go too far back, but for the most part, this is what businesses looked like before the internet. In short, if you wanted to engage with the company, you can do it in two sorts of ways, and these are the dimensions I've chosen. It's either getting information, so saying, when are you open? Do you provide this services? How much will this cost? Getting that sort of information, and then performing actions. So it's saying, hey, pay Carl this amount of money. Hi, I want to buy this product and have it delivered. So you can engage with a business in two ways, getting information and then, performing certain transactions or actions with those businesses. And for the most part, while people were in the office or, inside the business, for the first working 8 hours of the day, you could do pretty much anything for the most part. For the rest of the day, you couldn't really do this. People went home, they went to their families. So if you wanted to do something at 2 a.m. with a business, it is very unlikely that people would be there to facilitate an information query or a transactional query. The internet came along and we got these sorts of things. So for the most part, post, at least in South Africa, slowly started to wind down and people went online. Okay, so your websites went online. You could put a lot more information online about yourself. And this had a bit of a significant impact, so we're looking at, early 2000s, at least in South Africa, you went online for the first time, right? So we could access information about your company 24 hours a day. We could go onto the internet and go see, oh, these are the services they provide. These are pricing, so on and so forth. This is when they open. Actions for the most part, at least in the beginning stages of the internet, still the information or the internet was more informational than it was transactional or action based. So at the very least, you could get information 24 hours a day. It wasn't all the information, right? So there were still certain things where you had to pick up a phone and ask certain questions because to have all that information on the website was particularly difficult to kind of put off. But this is what it looked like with the internet. Okay. Then the next revolution came along, which was social. So, in the mid 2000s, things like, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram started to pick up, so over and above email and websites, people started to connect and engage with businesses on Facebook and Twitter, and they started asking more questions there. And then things started to change. It became a lot more conversational. At this stage of the game, more people started gaining access to the internet, and the barriers to entry and engaging with the internet started to drop down a little bit with people gaining more and more access. So companies then started to get a lot more volume, right? More people sending emails. It's a lot easier to send an email than write something and go to the post office. Okay. So just by the removal of the sort of friction and the ability to, interact with the business that easily, volume starts to pick up. And so you can see from the previous slide, companies had to hire more people. You had to hire people who dealt with your social media, who dealt with your business pages and the queries that came from that. I still actually believe that I think companies get more volume than they can actually handle, right? And so that's the question marks up there. Company can only hire X amounts of people, to maintain a profitability. And thereafter, just the customer service takes a bit of a knock, right? You just can't be everywhere with this ease of asking businesses for information and transacting with businesses. But with the social media, it did have a bit of an impact on companies. You were able to get more information out of companies, particularly in comment sections that other people have posted on business pages. So things that maybe a website might have dropped the ball on, you could kind of get from a business page or from a Twitter feed. Actions did improve as well. So with the social media guys and girls, you did start, you were able to, to perform certain stuff with the company through the pages, buy certain products, so on and so forth. So actions did improve, but it wasn't 24 hours a day, right? So it was still, depending on the action, it was still fairly limited to people being in the office. There was some automation, but not too much. And then the big one came along. Mobile definitely, as we all know, did change the game. And this was, it started with the iPhone, and it grew rapidly over the years. And this is what the world we know looks like today, right? For the most part, more channels started to crop up. So we saw huge amounts of transactional movements on apps, on web apps. Companies started to build these sorts of things out. Because mobile phones could connect to the internet, the barrier to entry to accessing the internet, you didn't need a computer, so that made a big deal. Airtime became a lot cheaper, and so accessing all these different, digital tools and channels, that barrier to entry dropped dramatically, and people started to transact with businesses aggressively. But this was a big deal. You can see over there on the far end, companies are able to create, apps that could start to take over these business actions, So, I mean, banking was a fantastic one. If you wanted to buy airtime before mobile apps, you'd go to the corner shop and go get your little airtime slip and type that in. Now you can do that on your banking app seamlessly. So there were a lot more actions that came out of this that you could transact with your business, and your web apps helped that, your apps helped that. WhatsApp also became a big player, to facilitate conversations with businesses, towards the end of the 2010s. And so this is what it kind of looked like. You could gain a little bit more information. So apps provided also information. But what apps really did is they were really able to start, to allow people to perform actions 24 hours a day. And so this is, what the graph kind of looks like. So from an informational perspective, it did improve ever so slightly, but it wasn't like 100%. We still have to email and call. From an action perspective, it improved dramatically. You could do a heck of a lot more things, 24 hours a day. And so that bar kind of filled up before from social media. And this is by and large where we kind of sit today. We can't do all the actions on our banking apps, but we can do a good chunk, most of them. Or in any other app. And then information did improve ever so slightly from the social media revolution that came. Cool. And so we're going to talk about today, the present. The big player in the room and what this discussion is about is OpenAI. OpenAI is a company that ended up creating, ChatGPT and all these large language models is what they call them. And these large language models can do some pretty phenomenal things. This is what the ChatGPT interface looks like. And so you get a little, for those who don't know, a little text box, and you can type things. And as you can see over here, you are going to do a presentation, to greet people. So greet people and tell us more about yourself. And it wrote itself without any more of my intervention. And so, yeah, it's what it does is it's just been trained on so much data that it can, you can ask it queries, it can respond appropriately, it can go find your information and respond based on that. It can perform certain actions, and yeah, it really is the future. As we know how mobile changed the world and how everybody went online, this will probably be bigger than mobile. The OpenAI models really come with a ridiculous amounts of functionality, which we'll talk about shortly. And so much so that we ended up building some little POCs. So, and this is just to show the power of this. So this over here is a WhatsApp conversation with a mock beauty salon. And for the most part, a lot of people do appointments through WhatsApp. And this over here allows you to have a flat out conversation with somebody at 8:30 at night when there's nobody in the store, and they can start fielding these questions as if a normal human would. It knows the people in the store, it can access diaries, it can take appointments, and so on and so forth. It obviously wasn't perfect because there's a little proof of concept we put together, but this POC really does show the power of what you can do. Your business would be online all the time and field as much queries as humanly possible. And then there you go. There was the whole POC from start to finish, booked the haircut, gave the phone numbers. We could automate this a little bit more with reoccurring clients, but that whole conversation that you see here, the stuff on the left, was done by a computer. And that's the computer responding in that time as well. So it responded lightning quick. Whereas before, in this day and age, you kind of have to wait for somebody to enter the store before you can engage in this sort of thing. So what can it do? It depends on what you can imagine. It really can do a heck of a lot of stuff. When trained with the right data and given the right data, it can answer questions on almost anything. It's quite literally limited to what you train it with. So your products, your policies, how to perform certain, functions on, current systems. So how do I do this in my app? How do I do that? Think of SaaS. I struggle with SaaS. It's a fantastically designed website. And so I find myself having to call or have them call me. And this over here, you could just have a conversation with whoever at any time of the night, with the ChatGPT model or a model. And it could answer all those sorts of questions, if trained properly as like a service agent. It can make product recommendations based on what your needs are, and you can ask those sorts of questions and then recommend stuff. With ChatGPT-4, it can also start to analyze transactions and provide insights. So if you give it a nice, massive Excel spreadsheet, then you start asking it to do stuff and draw graphs, it can also start doing that. So it can be tweaked and trained to provide almost any answer for your business, just depending on your particular use case. It can carry out business transactions. So when trained appropriately, and there'll be a bit of sophistication around that, it won't be as easy as like a question answer kind of thing, but it can start doing interesting things like fielding claims or insurances, for insurance or medical aid. As you saw, it can make a booking. It can make appointments, book me airplane tickets to this place, for example. You could get it to start making payments. Say, hey, please pay this person this, please buy me airtime. And then that brings you down to the buying of stuff. So it can buy you physical stuff, virtual stuff, book services. So really depending on whatever actions a business would like people to engage with them on, it could start doing that. It is obviously based on complexity, and certain tasks will and won't make sense for certain companies, and the cost to, train something to fix those sorts of problems, or to do or carry out those sorts of problems, will be an expensive endeavor. But for the most part, it can do a heck of a lot. And so finally, you could find yourself in a world where you have a virtual banker, insurance broker, financial advisors, fitness coaches. It can make you a fairly good gym plan with eating plan as well. It's very interesting, but for the most part, it sits under this umbrella of a virtual assistant. It really can do a lot of stuff when trained and optimized. Just the base models themselves do incredibly well. I think when trained and optimized for certain tasks, it can do extraordinary things. And so this is what it looks like now. So before, businesses really struggled to keep up with the demand and the volume of people, transacting with it, with people asking for information, more in the information sort of space. But yeah, before where businesses had those sorts of holes, you can train and deploy models to fix all those holes, and you can deploy them to almost any channel that allows for it. So Facebook, WhatsApp allows for it. It can be put on your website. You'll probably hook it into your emails, your mobile apps. So instead of calling the call center, you could do a quick conversation with the bot, and it'll answer stuff. And this is significantly better than our day-to-day chatbots. Our day-to-day chatbots are very prompt-based and very rule-based. This over here is conversational, and so that's the big difference between today and what these models can do. So this is what it looks like now with business in OpenAI. And this side will impact business. Your company can go online all day, every day, 24/7, and people can gain information from this company. It's obviously limited to the training that you can give it, but given the amount of processing power we have and the cost of that, we can almost train a model to provide any sorts of information about your company for whatever particular use case. Actions will improve. So before, you needed a lot of human intervention for certain complex stuff, and some things that aren't so complex. I haven't filled this bar up completely because I still do believe that there'll be like a fair percentage of things that we still want the humans to do. And I think that'll stay throughout, but there will be a lot of other actions that the models can start doing and picking up and performing over and above, traditional platforms, like your apps and your websites and so on and so forth. So yeah, this is the impact it'll have in your business. The business will be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for forever, as long as these models are in place and on the right channels. Cool. So how do you prepare? You had a mobile revolution that came along. You now have an AI revolution came along. The mobile revolution made a significant impact to companies and really helped them profit from that. So how do you prepare and profit from OpenAI? Well, you start by asking the right questions. From an information sort of perspective, I mean, how are people engaging with your business? Are they engaging with you primarily through WhatsApp and they don't care for your website? Are they calling your business a lot? Your call centers just completely flooded and packed to capacity. We get those fantastic ring calls. We're currently busy right now. Your call's important to us. How are they engaging with you? Where are they? The next question to ask is, well, what are they asking? What are they asking of us? What do they want to know? And then what can customers do on those channels? So let's take the booking of things on WhatsApp or asking for things on WhatsApp. What can they do? How do they transact with your business? What functionality do we want them to do? So some things we want customers to do, some things we don't want them to do. What is it we want them to do? I think the complement of what they're asking is what are they not asking and what do they want? That's a big deal. What is not said in the conversation that could give us a competitive edge? And then the other thing is, actions. What actions can they do? And then the next question is like, should we even embark on this journey? A lot of the times there's a lot of hype and a lot of talks and a lot of discussions. These sorts of things can become expensive. Is this right for my business? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it's at least you ask the question. And that's the point of all of this. If you do feel like, it is important for your business, then you can start going down the sorts of journey. You don't know what you don't know. And depending on your business and where they sit, I think this is a huge deal. Your company is having, I don't know how many different conversations all the time. What are those conversations? Is it being stored in a centralized sort of place? Do you have the right capabilities to take everything, unify them, put them into a single storage unit? So the conversation you have on Twitter, is that being saved somewhere? What does that conversation look like? What is being said? Are there differences between your Twitter and your Facebook? And you can start to segment customers. What do the telephone conversations look like? Your emails, your WhatsApp, all that data. Do you have a proper operational setup such that you can take it and collect it? To do this sort of exercise is extremely complex. Hopefully you have a nice, CRM system that kind of does everything for you and pumps all the data in there, and you don't have all the channels. But if you're like a large corporate, like a Standard Bank, or a Discovery, you find that you have a lot of touch points, and taking all this information and just sorting it out is going to be a huge task. And for that, you're going to need data engineers. You're going to need people who take information from one end, sanitize it, process it, store it. We do see an emergence of privacy engineers, sorry. The conversations you have with your banker on the email, well, who can see that? What should they see? How do we sanitize that? What mechanisms do we have in place to protect people's privacy? So that starts to become a very important topic. As much as the AI models became conversational, well, what conversations can we use to train? What should be inside those conversations? How do we train on conversations that are, redacted or have certain things obfuscated? You're probably going to need some data architects to go and architect the landscape and see what this should look like. Data governance would be a huge thing. In South Africa, it's not as much. We do have stuff like Poppy. Overseas in Europe, very big deal. Very serious about their compliance and their privacy. But you're going to have to lean on your legal departments. What can we store? What can we move? What can we process? So yeah, compliance, privacy, those are going to be big things going forward. Those will probably be your unsung heroes and will shape the business a lot. So as much as this will be a technical exercise, it'll also be an exercise for your other parts of the business, and what this kind of looks like needs to, those discussions need to start happening. So the first thing you're going to do is say, cool, we've asked the questions. We think there's merit in this. You're going to go collect the data. Well, having a lot of data and not knowing what's inside of the data is also problematic. I mean, if you can imagine how much data is pumping through a large corporate from their call centers through to their Facebook and their emails, That is a lot, and that is coming in every day. So the sheer volume of big data just pushing through there is huge. Once you've got all this data, you've got to go and analyze it. And so that's where your data scientists will come in. And preferably data science with natural language processing experience to go sift through this data. Well, what questions are our people asking? Would be a big one. What questions do we foresee them asking? You know, what are the future insights can we extrapolate from this? Take that sort of information and advise the business, not just out of an OpenAI setting, but from other sorts of settings. Those conversations you have are vital and key to your business. You'll probably have some machine learning engineers in the sort of layer, but not as much just yet. You'll have your data analysts. So data analysts will answer questions about today. The data scientist will mine the data, look at the data, and try to answer questions for tomorrow. Perhaps provide some nice models, some good insights. Perhaps train a model or two. Your data engineers will be throughout this life cycle. And here, what will be key will be your business leaders. Okay, so you're probably going to sit doing a lot of POCs. You know, what can it do? What should it do? What can't it do? Understanding that, having a business case. So should we have a virtual banker that we charge people £5 for example? You know, should we just offer the service to be better than our other competitors? So yeah, you can't see that so much because I'm in the way. But what does success look like for these projects? You know, we've built this model. What are the key metrics? So establishing those things are going to be huge. Understanding the problem and then knowing how to solve it, and also, you know, measuring success and what it shouldn't do is a big deal. Running the costs. What are the projected costs based off of our POC knowledge that we have, right? We see that these actions are very good, and based on the questions that our clients ask, if we deploy this to production, this would solve a huge amount of problems for our clients. Well, what are those actions? You know, what knowledge should we have in our knowledge-based systems that our models, people can converse with our models and get out, right? Are people asking about a certain policy all the time, or the exclusions normally of this policy? Should we even answer that question? It's these sorts of things. Once you analyze the data, will you have sorts of answers? So once you've gone through this and you've got a really good nifty business case, the next step would be consult the business. If you're a large corporate, like say Standard Bank, you know, you're going to have to start talking to your fraud teams. So the moment there's a new channel or a new capability, they are bad guys. What does fraud look like? Compliance, as mentioned before, and they'll be throughout the whole process, legalities around all these sorts of things, security, as much with the fraud, like what security mechanisms can we put in place to protect the company? Your IT teams will go without exception. Ethics is also becoming a big thing. How do we manage bias? You know, so the model responded like this to a certain group of people. Now we're on carte blanche. It could get awkward, right? So understanding and having these sorts of people and consulting with these subject matter experts within your company, depending on the size of your company, will be absolutely vital. And whether you should or shouldn't do something, and what are the implications thereof if you do go down this sorts of journey. So once you've consulted with the business, you're going to go build stuff. Okay. I actually see a large role for user experience people. So I think the user experience roles might diverge. You know, people will still concentrate on traditional channels like websites, apps, and so on and so forth. But I do think crafting a really good conversation and how it should respond, and can we train it to respond in a certain way? Can we train it with a certain personality? All those sorts of interesting sorts of use cases will be an interesting role. And this is an emerging role. We're talking about things that aren't quite there yet. But I do see value in having these sorts of people involved. You're going to need an AI architect, you know, so to put this whole landscape together, to glue everything together between your data engineers, your current systems. You're going to need somebody to architect that entire environment. Your key heroes here are going to be your machine learning engineers, and more importantly, your machine learning operations, your ML ops. You know, the ingesting of the data, the validating the data. You know, this data is extremely important in you know, training the models. You know, what does that look like? How do we, you know, write testing and scripts and stuff to make sure that our data validation's in place? You know, data pre-processing steps, making sure that that's in place. You know, at some point when we come all the way around to retraining stuff, you know, anomaly detection, all those sorts of things. But yeah, you're going to train, you're going to tune your models, you're going to evaluate those models, you're going to serve them. How are you going to serve them? You know, is it going to be, what are the different serving strategies? Is it going to be solving a batch or a real-time sort of problem? Security. As I mentioned before, someone's going to try to do some naughty stuff to your model. How do you fix that? How do you stop that from happening? How do you make it robust? How do you catch it? How do you monitor that? There's a thing popping up called glitch tokens, where people are now on purpose trying to confuse models and try to do stuff out of that. With the data pre-processing, also make sure that there's no sensitive information. So from the layers before, stop you from saying, hey, what was Rob's bank balance? And all of a sudden an answer comes out. That could be a very real problem, depending on how you train the stuff, but you shouldn't get to that point. Model optimizations, should you use this model from this company or use another model that we can train that's a little bit cheaper to train, that solves it, for half the cost, and we lose accuracy only by 2%. Maybe there's juice for that to be squeezed there. Cost optimization from an infrastructure perspective and infrastructure requirements. So overall, your machine learning engineers are going to be very busy. They're going to use the insights and the knowledge from your data scientists. They'll probably work hand in hand depending on the use case, but the guys and girls here, machine learning engineers, will be the real heroes, and your prompt designers. I think you'll need these sorts of people to build these sorts of systems out. And then finally deploy it, right? Where you're going to deploy it: Facebook, your website, your web apps, your emails, your WhatsApp. In this sort of layer, you're going to need your backend engineers, talking to traditional systems. Security, probably going to need these guys a few steps beforehand. Your DevOps engineers, your ML engineers, your continuous training, your continuous monitoring. Probably your data scientists will also play into effect here. And the biggest key to this is not to say we use OpenAI. That your company's success will not rely on solely OpenAI. Its success will lie in its operations, its ability to detect change, its ability to see the conversation changing with its customers across its channels, okay? And training the models and answering those questions that you don't have answers for. So it lies in the operational aspect. Something happens, COVID happens, we need to redeploy models, that whole process. That's where the success lies, not just in using the AI, but it's how that AI gets carried out from end to end. And so, yeah, the repeating, maintaining, and monitoring of the system is key to success in all of this. And so we should focus on models. That's important, but operations is even more important. Alrighty, and so with OpenAI, it gave us a few things. It gave us some really cool models. They have varying capabilities. Some of them cost difference. And really, the internet does talk a lot about the models, and we should. They are remarkable. They can do some things that are mind-blowing, things that you'd probably never think a computer could do. But the one unsung hero that we even at our candid to some extent, I think the founders perhaps missed, was it gave us a universal interface. There's this thing now that exists that can do a lot. It can give me information. It has a potential to carry out a lot of actions. You can see yourself almost transacting with this thing on a day-to-day basis, for the most part, which is your ChatGPT browser. So you can almost imagine a universal interface where you just do everything here. However, it can't, talk outside of it. It's a language model. It doesn't know how to interact with the rest of the world. So you can see IBI is like, hey, please use my standard bank account to pay Mark for lunch, 500. And it says, hi, I'm sorry, I'm an AI language model. I don't know how to communicate with the rest of the world. Okay, I'm just a model. And so that is obviously problematic. And so it can give you information, but doing those sorts of actions from inside ChatGPT itself is a problem. You can train the the OpenAI models to perform certain things on different channels, like WhatsApp, for example. But within inside ChatGPT, it can't talk to anything outside of itself, right? And so we're going to talk about the future. And frankly, I thought the future was going to be a year or two from now, but the future's already here. So ChatGPT has ChatGPT plugins, and as you can imagine, it's this hook that you can put inside of ChatGPT, and you can have ChatGPT, that interface that you just saw, this idea of a universal interface. You can see it talking to all these other different plugins, right? What businesses have now is another channel. Yay for businesses! So more than just having apps and websites, we're going to have a ChatGPT channel to start fielding requests, because where the people are is where the customers are, and generally where the money is. So over and above all the websites, you're going to see companies now also having to support plugins. Unfortunately, it is on a waiting list, so I had to just pull this from the internet. Otherwise, I could have showed you a cool demo with that. But this is what the interface will tentatively look like. You'll have a certain model, and you'll see there's plugins over there. And as you kind of go along, you can go to a plugin store, right? So that's a big deal. So as we had our traditional app stores, you're going to have a plugin store where you can go and install certain plugins. Businesses will look to compete here. Who's one? Should I install Expedia or Kayak? Who's going to give me the information? So you can see over here, they've installed these sorts of apps, and this was the query that they asked. They're looking for vegan food recommendations, vegan restaurant recommendations in San Francisco. They want a recipe for Sunday. They want to calculate the calories for this recipe, and then they want to add that the ingredients for that recipe onto Instacart. Think of Instacart as like a Checkers 360. And off ChatGPT kind of goes. Okay, it analyzes the stuff that says, okay, cool, I'm going to use OpenTable, to find the restaurants. Okay, so it uses the information inside of OpenTable to get that stuff. It also uses information in OpenTable to get the recipe. It uses Wolfram Alpha to go and calculate all the calories, which is huge. I mean, we've just taken a recipe, provided that to another plugin, and it's now providing us, how many calories for each individual item, just to make you feel more guilty if it was a bad meal. And then from there, it can literally go and add it to your shopping cart. So now it's taking it and taking all those sorts of ingredients and adding it to your shopping cart on Instacart. And if you'd kind of go, when you go into Instacart, this is what it looks like. Here's your ingredients list. There's the shop. There's all the ingredients, and you can obviously add and change things. What is also important to note there is just how this interface would serve a little bit better than having the backwards and forwards that you would have on a ChatGPT, like, increase the can of peas by 1 or 2. So some interfaces, ChatGPT will work very well. Other interfaces, a normal traditional app will work very well. And businesses will have to pick and choose which one makes most sense for the use case. And that's plugins, ladies and gentlemen. They have also introduced another API called Whisper. And all that does is it just takes voice, transcribes it into text. But you can obviously take this text, put it into ChatGPT and to understand. So what I do see also happening for businesses will be a big drive for voice, because there are some things that voice, couldn't do so well. Just transcribing the voice is a difficult task in general. The other providers do that. So Azure, AWS do provide that, but that conversational aspect that ChatGPT brings to the table, I do see voice picking up a lot more, because it's easier to say, hey, pay Carl 200 Rand for lunch than it is to type that out. Okay, so I do think at some stage or another, you're probably going to find voice stuff inside of ChatGPT. You'll probably find your home automation picking up a little bit more. But yeah, this would be another avenue where things crop up. So how do you prepare for plugins? I mean, plugins are meant to be a thing of the future. It's probably going to be something by the end of this year that drops. Well, join the waiting list. It's real simple. Join the waiting list and read the documentation. It's a fantastic start. So get on top of that curve. This is a piece of JSON that you would store. Your domain, the well-knowns directory, you put that there so we know that you own this domain, and you own all the stuff here. And then all it's going to do is just point your API. There we go. And it'll be a YAML file that this will be the YAML file, and this will like explain to ChatGPT, what they can do and how they can interact with your business. So this is for a to-do list, for a to-do plugin found on inside the OpenAI documentation, and it just explains like this is this. Here's the schema. Here's the endpoints. Here's all this sorts of stuff. This is what it does, and then ChatGPT will know how to interact with your API. Everything is still in alpha for now, but this will be the near future. So for certain businesses, this will make a heck of a lot more sense. You'll also find that people will ask for information about your company from these sorts of plugins, not just WhatsApp, depending on where they are. So it's important to start investing in the systems. Alrighty, so what are you going to need for plugins from a person perspective? You're going to need your usual AI architects, ML engineers, data engineers, privacy people, security. So, which API do we expose, and what is the security stuff around that? And when we expose this, it's exposed, so anybody can go to your URL and see what you're offering the world, not just OpenAI. So what does that look like? The other people, the unsung heroes, I think, as much as I said before, this is a technical exercise. Well, what does legal have to say? Compliance, privacy, ethics, fraud departments, all those guys and girls will play a very important role in getting these sorts of things to production. Cool. And so in summary, I do just want to add that all the stuff you can do for clients, you can do inside your business. So you can really hyper optimize the inside of your business. If you want to have, there's normally an IT call desk. You can have ChatGPT in there to help answer queries, facilitate bookings, and all of that sort of stuff. How do I book my leave? You can probably get, a Slack bot to build all that sort of stuff out. So all the benefits that your customers can see, you can also use internally. If you're very smart about how you leverage this technology internally, you can hyper optimize stuff to just deliver quicker, better, faster to your customers. But yeah, it's just worth mentioning that this isn't just something that belongs to customers. It can also be used internally for your employees. There are other language models. As much as you saw OpenAI and you said, hey, cool, let's click on this. There are other people that are doing these large language models that aren't spoken about. Google is one of them. Sorry, with Bard AI, and it does get a little bit of FaceTime. You do have Facebook's Llama. So Facebook ended up creating a large language model. For jokes, I guess they like the name Llama. Well, it stands for Large Language Model, Meta AI or whatever, and so they fiddled with the acronym to make it Llama. So there are other people coming onto the scene, not just OpenAI. So when you construct these systems, keep this in mind. You don't want to be locked into a particular vendor. And so the game is also changing very quickly. I mean, Llama was, I think, a last month thing. The guys and girls at Stanford got hold of Llama and were able to train it and produce similar accuracies for like $600. So there was Alpaca. So we went from Llama to Alpaca. And then Databricks kicked into the scene and got hold of the models and got similar accuracies for like $30 to train the model. And now that's a big deal. To train models to do this sort of sophisticated stuff at that price point is huge. They also released Dolly 2.0, so they called their large language model Dolly after the clone sheep about 2 weeks ago. So the world is changing. AI is here to stay. And there will be different vendors. So I'm just mentioning that now. So in summary, right, you can have knowledge and action-based AI systems that do almost anything on any platform with near human understanding and interaction 24 hours of the day, 7 days a week. Your CRM ops, well, that's something I put in this presentation. What does that look like? Taking all the conversations and information touch points with your clients and harnessing that and putting it into one place. What does that look like? That's a huge task. All your social media, your call centers, your websites, do you have those sorts of operations in place? So as people start asking more questions, you can train models, you can pivot, you can always stay on the pulse. The key to staying on the pulse is making sure that that's in place. It should be in place, but it's a difficult task. Once you do embark on this journey, do you have the right people? Do you like what are your privacy frameworks inside the company? Do you have privacy engineers, data engineers, your data scientists, your machine learning engineers? It's something I found when engaging with clients. The operations of machine learning is almost as important as the model itself. When the world starts to change, how do you detect it? How do we know that there's different questions being asked? How do we manage all those sorts of anomalies? When do we train? What does that look like? When do we retrain? The continuous training concept. So that over there is huge. Companies really need to start looking into that. Your unsung heroes are your business capabilities, your compliance, your legal, your security, fraud, IT, operational departments. Are they up to date with this? Are they looking into Dolly and all these sorts of things and what this means for their business? And then, what can your company or what should your company expose and build out? So cool, there's these ChatGPT plugins, but should we be there? What do we expose? Answering those questions are very important. And I think just doing a good old AI recon of your business, how ready are they and how long will it take to be ready, is super important. But that's that. Thank you for